We're live to you from Johannesburg. Here's what's coming up on the show tonight. The Special Investigating Unit's cases are piling up. Does the SIU have enough venom to strike at maladministration? And Africa's earned its first vice president seat at the International Mathematical Union. Professor Loiso Nonga joins us in studio. And Checkpoint tries to get to the bottom of taxi violence. That's tonight with Jane Dutton. I'm Cathy Mohlahlana. It's great to have you with us on the show tonight. The Special Investigating Unit is probing one of the largest scams in SA's medical history. The collection of cases could be worth more than 80 billion rand. But South Africans are also still waiting for updates on key investigations which they've carried out. And the big question tonight is, can the country trust the investigations authority? That's the question we'll be putting to the SIU. Well, what's your question? Our phone lines are open. You can call us on 011 759 6340. You can also tweet our hashtag. The hashtag is Tonight with Jane Dutton. But first, Tembekile standing by with your news headlines. Tembekile, good evening. What do you have for us this hour?
Quite a bit for you coming up on eNCA tonight. In fact, let's get straight into those headlines, Cathy. The Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture has published a list of key witnesses who will testify. The commission will sit for the first time on Monday. Some of those witnesses include former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas, Senior Treasury Official Willie Mathebula, former MP Feki Mentor, and former GCIS CEO Themba Maseko will also testify. Another key witness is Acting GCIS Chief Executive Phumla Williams. The commission will look into allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud in the public sector, including state-owned enterprises. The National Prosecuting Authority says it will complete its probe into the Estina dairy farm saga within 6 months. 8 people accused of looting millions from the project in Vrede in the Free State appeared in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court today. The NPA says it needs to finalize investigations. Judgment has been reserved.
Once we have completed the investigation, there would not be anything outstanding.
My question is, will you be finished with that investigation in 3 to 6 months? Can you make that promise to the court, as your counsel seems to have suggested? Can you make a commitment? Can you give us a stake in the ground?
No, we'll never come to court and ask for 3 to 5 months postponement if we are not sure that within that period we'll be finalizing our investigations. I think within that 5 months period, everything will be finalized.
And the NDC Alliance says it's put together the best legal minds on the continent. This as it challenges Zimbabwe's election results. South African advocates Mahlodi Muofhe and Thembeka Ngcukaitobi are on that team. They landed in Zimbabwe earlier today. The MDC Alliance is claiming the polls were rigged. Zimbabwe's Constitutional Court will hear the matter on Wednesday.
President Chamisa has put together a team of experts in law and is hiring advocates from across the continent, an international team, and the first 2 advocates have arrived in the country today. You're talking Advocate Mahlodi Muofhe and Advocate Toby. They have been locked up working very hard today, and we've seen them interact with Advocate Muofhe, our own Tawani Muofhe, who's Zimbabwean, is going to be leading this team and arguing the court case, but obviously working with the total collection of the brains and the expertise of all the experts that have been roped into the team by President Chamisa. The reason President Chamisa has had to go far and wide and pick the best brains in the continent and on the globe is because he believes and knows that the evidence he has is watertight and will certainly have to be dealt with by lawyers who can make sure that the judges understand its impact in dealing with numbers here. So President Chamisa is taking this case seriously. He's taking the people of Zimbabwe seriously, and that is clear when you look at the teams that's put together and the hard work that they have already begun preparing for the case that's going to be held on Wednesday, the 22nd at 10 a.m. at the Constitutional Court.
And that'll do it for your headlines for now, but as ever, much more coverage throughout the evening here on eNCA. For now, it's back to Cathy.
You know what, it's certainly going to be interesting observing this case as it unfolds in Zimbabwe. Certainly some of South Africa's best legal minds being put to good use.
And as always, the eNCA team will be there to bring you all the action live here on the channel.
All right, Thembekile, you can, of course, see Thembekile later on tonight as he brings us the latest news headlines. Well, let's pick up the show here. How much money is the country losing through maladministration? And do we have efficient mechanisms to deal with corruption in state institutions? Now, critics call the specialized investigating unit, they've described it as being toothless. And of course, much of it comes down to the nature of investigations that they've been carried out and the success rate of these investigations. Well, to help us answer some questions tonight, the SIU's head of governance, Advocate Mahlodi Muofhe, joins me in studio. Advocate, it's such a pleasure to have you with me tonight. Thank you for your time.
Good evening.
Firstly, let's talk about the kind of workload that the SIU currently have. In Parliament, you had put before the record that there are 27 cases which you're investigating, many of them high profile and all of them having something to do with corruption and maladministration in the state.
Yes, maladministration, malpractices in the public sector, of course, even in the private sector, we shouldn't lose sight of that fact, is rampant. As the SIU, we are seized with many cases, and they're increasing on a daily basis, by and large because President Ramaphosa proclaims, as you would know, that we function as a consequence of the president issuing a proclamation that we've got to investigate malpractices or maladministration at which institution or that institution. And because many people are coming up, whistleblowers are also coming up, reporting through the presidential hotlines, some of them even coming to our own offices, these cases are piling up. But as the SIU, we are poised to strike, you know, as a matter of fact. And we have highly specialists in different fields, especially lawyers.
So before I get to the statement of being poised to strike, let's take it back a little bit. Of course, much of the investigations that you do have to be under the proclamation of the president. Yes. Perhaps juxtapose the last 6 months in terms of the proclamations that you've had to investigate corruption and maladministration in the state, and what you experienced was under the Jacob Zuma administration over the last 10 years.
It will be difficult for us as the SIU to pronounce on the different experiences under different presidents. Safe to say that as the SIU, whenever there are proclamations, we act on them. And post-acting on them, we write a report with recommendations to the president. And in terms of the SIU and the Special Tribunals Act, once we've completed that task, it's entirely up to the president, at his wisdom, to release the reports.
Of course, one of the things that this question draws me to is the fact that today we're dealing with so much that's being uncovered where corruption is concerned, and much of it related to issues around state capture. So given the fact that the SIU is the one authority that we have that is supposed to investigate at least government and the functions and the institutions of government, should state capture have even been allowed to get to where it was when we have bodies like yourselves that are supposed to be looking into corruption that's taking place?
Well, the answer, in all fairness, is that having struggled and fought for democracy, we shouldn't even begin to be talking about corruption and loss of public monies through devious activities, because as people who fought for the struggle, we know how difficult it was. It is incumbent upon each one of us, whether in government or not, to use the money prudently. But however, human beings being human beings, they do get tempted, and unfortunately we find ourselves in a situation where acknowledgeably corruption is one of our biggest problems now in the country. But President Ramaphosa, all the time, he talks about fighting corruption.
Are there issues that you would have wanted to investigate that you felt you didn't have the room to investigate because you obviously need the green light from the president to do so?
Since my joining the SIU, I've never experienced a situation where we requested the president for a proclamation and he declined. I wouldn't talk about, the previous regime's experience because I was not there. But as of now, I know that the president wants us to root out malpractices and maladministration in government. And might I just add, there is not necessarily a wrong perception out there that the SIU is not striking. The SIU has achieved in many ways than one a whole lot and saved this country more than what it could be today had it not been for the intervention of the SIU. I would imagine perhaps it's just that it wouldn't pronounce. As the SIU gets a proclamation, as it investigates, in the process of investigating, as it uncovers things which might need urgent attention. For example, if when we uncover there is some element of criminality in this instance, there and there, even before we complete a report, we refer the matters of criminal activities. As you know, the NPA is the only institution in our country which has the right to prosecute, unless if it's for private prosecution. So we've got a number of cases, criminal cases that we have referred to the NPA.
On that point, though, there are questions around how seriously the NPA actually takes some of the recommendations that you bring before it. And, now that we're there, we can talk, for example, about the Brian Hlongwa matter that today is still being investigated further by the Hawks on instruction of the NPA, and yet the SIU has compiled and completed a report.
I wouldn't speak on behalf of the NPA. The relevant authorities there can speak for themselves. But from our side, we have professional people who do this job. When we refer a matter for criminal prosecution, we would have done just about everything possible to ensure that the matter we are referring to, the NPA, for example, meets the requirements of criminality, all the elements of criminality. But however, the NPA is seized with that mandate. They may have to look probably with a different eye, and maybe they then would think that another agency, which is the Hawks in this instance, perhaps must go and investigate further.
So with relation specifically to the Brian Hlongwa matter, what else do you think would still need to be investigated if you, as you say it, do your jobs as thoroughly as you've put it?
As I said, where we have referred matters to the NPA, it is only the NPA which can really answer as to where it is insofar as this or that case is concerned. But even besides that, I can go on now to where we've got, end-to-end right ourselves as the SIU. For example, we've got the right to litigate. We have litigated, we have saved the states. I don't have the figures here, but about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the Minister of Public Works held a public media conference where he basically was talking about how much as the SIU had saved the government just simply by instituting civil action and recovering monies which otherwise were unduly received by people who should not have received them. Right. In some instances, we have intervened to cancel unlawful contracts which were entered into, which contracts, if it had not been for intervention, would have costed the country millions and millions of rands. I would imagine perhaps we were not communicating more in terms of that area. So generally, we're doing a lot of work.
All right. We'll continue and pick up on the issue of recoveries of money in a moment, but that will be after this short break. Stay with us for this conversation.